Blanche's Little Girl is the 14th episode of the third season of The Golden Girls. This is directed by Terry Hughes, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. It's definitely a good episode, but there are times when it's a little uncomfortable, but I'll talk about that when we get there. It starts off with Sophia coming in dressed as a cowgirl. I love the outfit, and apparently she got into trouble at work because she kept saying hello instead of howdy. And then Blanche comes in. She got a postcard from her daughter, Rebecca, and she hasn't seen Rebecca in a number of years, so she's obviously overjoyed that her daughter's got in touch, her daughter's coming to visit. Cut to the next scene. Rebecca arrives. She's played by Shawn Schepps, and this is when things get a little bit awkward, mostly with Sophia. Sophia says to her, "You're Blanche's daughter, the model," and it's worth pointing out that Blanche had said her daughter had a figure like a model. She was going to Paris to pursue a career in modelling, and Rebecca she doesn't have a traditional model's figure, let's put it that way. And Dorothy apologises. She says, "You'll have to forgive my mother," and Rose remarks, "It's just that we didn't expect you to be this fat," which is just not great. But after Sophia makes a lot of uncomfortable comments, I feel like it was unnecessary, and it kind of weakened the main message. I'll talk about what I mean by that in a moment. But Rebecca does reply, "I may have lost my figure, but I still have my sense of humour," which I thought was great. It was a really great response to have in the moment. Blanche then talks to her separately, and she says to Rebecca, "Look at yourself. How can you be happy?" And I don't love that. I don't love that comment at all, but Rebecca gives as good as she gets, and she's not willing to take this attitude, which I really respect. Her partner then arrives. This is a character called Jeremy, played by Joe Regalbuto, and he makes a few odd remarks to begin with. And this is the bit where I feel like they shouldn't have had Sophia saying quite as many negative things about Rebecca's appearance, because whenever people would look at Jeremy strangely for saying something nasty about Rebecca, well, Sophia said the same things. Why is that okay for Sophia to say it, but not Jeremy? Obviously, Jeremy's supposed to be her partner. He's supposed to lift her up and protect her and care for her. But I feel like Sophia saying those things just kind of weakens it. If Jeremy had been the only one saying quite so many nasty things, it would have been more powerful. So I think they made a bad decision in trying to get some humour, and I put that in air quotes, out of the things Sophia was saying. It kind of weakened the overall argument. Sophia then comes into the kitchen where the others are and comments that Rebecca and Jeremy are in the main room talking about marriage. And given the fact that Jeremy has not been very nice to Rebecca, Blanche doesn't really want to think of her daughter getting married to him. They are going off to a baseball game, Blanche, Rebecca, and Jeremy. And Dorothy keeps trying to say something. She's just fed up of remark after remark from Jeremy. And again, it was only a few scenes ago that Sophia was saying remark after remark, so that really kind of weakened it. But I respect Dorothy for wanting to say something, but she doesn't. But she does then snap at Rose, which I don't agree with. She snapped at Rose about her constant back in St. Olaf stories, and there was no need for it. If she'd snapped and then apologised because she was just wound up, fair enough, but she didn't, and I don't agree with that. Sophia then comes in, and she comes in with two other colleagues from the restaurant, and they're all older women, and they're coming to face Mr. McCracken, their boss, on their own turf. And the three of them sit together around the table, and Mr. McCracken comes in. He's played by Scott Menville, and he's a teenager. He's very young, and it was an entertaining scene. I quite liked it. I thought that was not too bad. We then have, a little while later, more remarks from Jeremy, and Blanche has had enough. She takes Rebecca into the kitchen and tells her that he is horrible to her, she shouldn't marry him, and Blanche, I think, had done the right thing, but Rebecca doesn't want to hear it. Who would? And she leaves with Jeremy. And Blanche is obviously really struggling with this. The girls are in the kitchen. A little while later, Blanche comes down, unable to sleep. And I like that they're there to support her. They told her she did the right thing. It's difficult being a mother. And it was a really nice moment. And then Rebecca arrives. She comes back and realises that after thinking about what Blanche said, Blanche was right. Jeremy isn't nice to her. And it was nice that she finally realised the truth. I don't think it would have been as satisfying if the message was just, oh well, you can try and guide your children, but they're not always going to listen. It would be an accurate message, but it wouldn't be very satisfying. So I think they took the right direction there. We did end on another unkind, not necessarily a remark, but attitude towards Rebecca, where Blanche said the girls were all in the kitchen having cheesecake, and Rebecca said, cheesecake sounds nice, and Blanche decided to steer her away from the kitchen, which was not necessarily called for. So I feel like they could have watered down some of the unpleasant opinions about Rebecca's size, and it would have made it more powerful if Jeremy was the only one really having some remarks. Yes, Sophia's initial remark about her being Blanche's daughter, the model, fair enough. But I think they did a little bit too much and took it a little bit too far, and it just weakened their argument that Jeremy was being horrible, because most of his remarks were about her size, but other people were making remarks about her size as well. So nobody really came off great. Dorothy did, apart from her snapping at Rose. Dorothy clearly had a lot of issues with Jeremy from the beginning, and I think that really came across. But in general, it is a good episode. Not perfect, but I think it has some really important messages about not accepting somebody when they're horrible to you, when they constantly belittle you, not settling down with them just because you feel like you should settle down, which is what Rebecca was doing. She wanted a husband, she wanted a family. She didn't necessarily want Jeremy, and it took her conversation with Blanche for her to realise that she deserves better. And I think that's a great message. Not a perfect delivery throughout the episode, but at the end of it, Blanche's little girl is... I don't like that title as well. Were they going for some comedy with that title by calling her little girl when there are a lot of remarks about her not being little? Maybe I'm overthinking the title, I don't know. But either way, it's definitely not a bad episode.